think I will go ahead and get started with our introduction, and hopefully more people will sign on. As I said, I'm Joyce Stein. I'm the program coordinator for the Down Syndrome Network of Montgomery County, and we are thrilled that you are all with us tonight to learn about LISS funding. We have Ms. Andre Coates, the expert on this subject. We're very lucky to have her. So you will leave at the end of the night with a lot of information. Just a little bit about the Down Syndrome Network of Montgomery County. Our mission is to empower and support individuals with Down syndrome, their families, and the community through education, information, public awareness, and advocacy. Do a little bit of housekeeping. Please stay on mute during the presentation. We welcome cameras on so we can see participants, but if you're more comfortable keeping it off and you're doing other things in the background, do whatever works for you. Please use the chat feature or raise your hand using the reaction tab to ask questions. We want to make sure we're a small group tonight, it looks like, so we want to make sure that everyone's questions are answered. For those who want closed captioning, click on live transcript and then click on show subtitles. Try to keep your questions general. And at the end of the night, we will have a program evaluation for people to complete. And I will put the this link in the chat towards the end of the evening. So without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful speaker, Ms. Andre Coates. She is the creator of MCC, Maryland Community Connections. She was adamant that services for individuals with disabilities be in line with a community-based focus. After being a volunteer organization for 5 years, on July 1st, 2006, Maryland Community Connection began serving their first participant in their supported employment program. Under Ms. Coates' leadership, MCC has served over 2,000 individuals at the Southern and Eastern Shore in their LISS, supported employment, support, family and individual support services, and basic needs programs. That's a really amazing number. Her current professional affiliations include Developmental Disability Administration's Employment First Advisory Group, Human Services Coalition of PG County, Developmental Disability Council of Prince George's County, Max Board of Directors, and Transitioning Youth and Life Employability Skills Training Program. She is a graduate of the University of Hawaii with a BS in Human Development. Ms. Coates has over 35 years of experience in advocating for people with disabilities and now adds her personal perspective on having a loved one with a disability. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and she will share her screen and begin our presentation.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me be a part of your session. I've known Joy for a while in different roles she has had in a developmental disability community. And normally I don't really do presentations, but however, when Joy asked, I could not turn her down. So I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to be here today. And so let me see about sharing my screen. Okay. And so Joy did a little introduction. Thank you so much. As she said, I'm one of the creators for Maryland Community Connection with Kimberly and Snyder, which also has a loved one with disabilities. Maryland Community Connection is located in Prince George County in Lanham, Maryland. And some of our services that we provide is our supportive employment program, where we assist individuals in finding jobs out in the community and maintaining jobs. We have a summer employment youth program with the Doors office, where we assist kids in Prince George County, age 14 through 21, in summer employment. And we have our personal support program where we provide assistance in recreation, medical appointments, grocery store shopping, so a wide variety. The program that y'all are here to talk about today is the Low Intensity Support Program, better known as LISS. And this is where families that live in Maryland and have a loved one with a developmental or intellectual disability can apply for funding per fiscal year up to $2,000 of resources. And so this program is funded through the Developmental Disabilities Administration, and you don't have to have applied for their services. However, you do have to have a loved one with a developmental or intellectual disability. And currently, there are 2 agencies that support the state of Maryland with this program. PENMA, which handles the central and western region, and Maryland Community Connection. And we currently provide services for the southern region, which is Prince George County, Montgomery, Charles, St. Mary's, and Calvert County, and all of the Eastern Shore. DDA, the Developmental Disability, starts the LISS program with a random selection drawing. It used to be first come, first serve, and a lot of families did not like that system because when the program opened up, I would say probably in a week, all the funding was gone. And so a lot of advocacy groups and families had requested DDA to change that system, and they heard you. And so it is a random drawing selection. We are at perfect time to having this session because the random selection drawing for the new fiscal year 24 opens up Monday, May the 1st. So you are getting the information hot off the press. So when families are going to do the random drawing, they have to go to DDA's website, and they will click on for the LISS program, and they will fill out the application. It is very simple. It is just asking some contact information, name and stuff, date of birth of your child, and they will be put into the drawing. And so let's go over this process. And so DDA offers the LISS program in 2 rounds, round 1. And so if you see round 1 for fiscal year 2024, it opens up May the 1st. It will stay open until June the 30th, and that's when it closed. So if you know of any families or friends that have a loved one with the intellectual or developmental disability, they can apply from May 1st to June 30th. The random selection will take place July the 15th. And so DDA does the random drawing. They will notify the 2 providers, Maryland Community Connection and PENMA, in reference to the selection of the individual. And so it'll be a couple things that happen. In 20 business days after the random drawing, you will receive written notification of your status of your loved ones. And so you will get a letter, one of 3 letters. One will say, congratulations, your loved one was selected for LISS. And then we'll tell you to start turning in the necessary documents. The second letter you will get will be that your loved one was not selected. And what will happen is they will go on the wait list. And so everyone that did the random drawing may not apply for LISS. And when funds open up, we will go to the next person on the wait list. So your loved one's name could come off that wait list during round one. The third letter you will receive is that your loved one does not qualify for LISS. And so anybody that is on a waiver, such as the autism waiver, or currently receiving DDA services, is not eligible for the LISS program. They will have to go back to their coordinator or case manager if they needed services. So if you're in the waiver, you are not eligible for LISS services. So round one happens. We start processing. Your child's on the wait list. Their name never came off the wait list. You have a second opportunity. And so that will be for round two. Now, remember round one, you'll see that the access to LISS closed on June 30th. On round two, DDA will open up the link for the random selection application July the 16th. DDA will close it November the 30th. And then the random drawing happens December the 15th. And so round two is a really long period because families will say, oh, I haven't heard anything. And you got to look at the dates that DDA has set up. So they open back up for round two, July the 16th. They keep it open till November the 30th for as many families to apply. So nothing is being done during this time for round two. They do not do the random selection until December the 15th. And then don't forget, we have 20 business days to notify families in writing that what their status is. So a lot of times you may be that first person on July the 16th and you put in your request for LISS and you're wondering, okay, it's July. You know, it's now October, I haven't heard anything. This is why you will not hear anything, because the drawing does not take place until December the 15th. Okay. So your first step is just do it's a one-page application online to get your child's name on the list. Sorry. It's jumping back and forth. Okay, so the question is, you can receive up to $2,000 of resources. And so these are items that Maryland Community Connection will purchase for your child. And so the number one question families have is, what could I apply for? And so DDA puts out a guidebook for families every year, and they will tell you what you could apply for. And so the items that are listed on the screen now are for the current LISS program we're doing now for fiscal year 23. So the first item that could be requested is adaptive items. Things that will aid in daily living, specialized equipment, such as if a person needs a specialized car seat, stroller, those type of things, adaptive clothes, adaptive shoes. Assistive technology is a big category for the LISS program, where a lot of families will request computers, laptops, iPads, headphones, software. And so this category is one of our most requested items. Our next item families could choose is caregiving services. So attended care, child care, respite. If you need those types of services, LISS could cover. The next one is educational services, training and support. The training and support does not have to necessarily be for your loved one that you're applying for. It could be for you. So if you wanted to attend, say, a Down syndrome conference, LISS could pay the cost for the conference. Now, when you look at the guidebook, it will say we will not pay for food and lodging and travel. They are just paying for the conference. The tuition and tutoring has changed for this category. It has been for post-secondary services. And so individuals that had put in for tuition or tutoring in the past for their loved one, whether they were going to private school or they were needing some tutoring services, if it's not for post-secondary or vocational training, your loved one will not be able to get this category. The next one is home modification and barrier removal. And so this category has also been a popular category where widening doors, installing ramps, grab bars. We've done a lot of fences, security systems, such as the cameras and things. And so the only caveat for this category is you must be a homeowner. You cannot be a renter and receive approval for this particular services. The next category is identification, where we do reimbursement for fingerprints or Maryland State ID or ID braces and cards. And so this is only a reimbursement category, because if you think about it, if you have to go to the motor vehicle and get a state ID, they expect payment right then and there. You can't say, well, third party is going to pay it. One of the categories that a lot of families have advocated in the past that was not part of LISS is recreational services. And so we had a lot of families talk about the need for socialization out in the community for their loved ones. And so DDA has added this category on, and it includes camp and community integration services. And basically the community integration services are different recreational services that is being provided out in the community. And the way families have to obtain this, it has to be specific for the individual. And so we purchased a gym membership. That gym membership could have been for the individual and +1. So if a parent needs to go, we've had a lot of individuals do music classes, dance classes, probably all the classes that are in the Maryland Park and Planning Board can be approved. What can't be approved is general recreational items. So like going to a movies, going to the concert, anybody could use those tickets. And so if it's a generalization and not specific for individuals signing up, usually it's no. Transportation services, we have covered for LISS. And so individuals that are using Metro Access, we put funding on their Metro Access card. Individuals that using Lyft and Uber, those services are usually only reimbursement because you have to have a credit card on file in order to receive those services. And so that information is in the guidebook. Wellness, and so LISS does cover medical services, behavior services, dental services, therapeutic services. So a wide variety of choices. Some of the difficulties families will have with LISS is they go outside of the categories that DDA has approved. And so I know as a family member, we can be strong advocates to get things for our loved ones. But I am going to tell you, for this program, it is best to stay within the category that the state has said they will approve. If you put in something that is outside of the category, you would normally get a denial letter. When you receive a denial, everyone has appeal rights. And what I tell families is going through the appeal process takes time. And remember, I said it's a wait list. And so once you get a denial letter, that funding is released. So that $2,000 is released to the next family on the list. And so you may have appeal rights. And actually, when you appeal, one of the things that the state has that is not appealable is lack of funding. And so while you're trying to appeal and all the funding is being used up, that is never a opportunity for you to win an appeal. So I tell families, look at the different categories. When you get your guidebook, you will be able to see more detail in reference to things that you could purchase, and try to stay within the listing that DDA has put forth. Reimbursement. And so this is a tricky one. I tell families, do not purchase something with the intention that LISS will cover it, because you have to still be approved for LISS. And so we don't want families to put expenses out and they don't get approved for it, and then it becomes a financial hardship. And so reimbursement, when you are requesting reimbursement, it has to be those items that I just talked about. You can't put in reimbursement for everything that you purchase for your loved one. You still have to stay in that category, and then you still have to turn in the necessary documents for that category. With additional, you need to show proof of payment and a W-9. So you can get reimbursement long as it's within that, the services is within that fiscal year. So the fiscal year starts July the 1st, 2023, and ends June the 30th, 2024. And so sometimes we know camp comes up around March or so. And you know you have to pay for camp well in advance. But the services does not start until the summer. LISS will consider you for reimbursement even though you paid before the fiscal year. The criteria is the services can't be until the fiscal year started. So if you paid for something, fiscal year starts July the 1st. This particular camp you put in starts June the 1st. We will not pay those costs because it's before the fiscal year. So the services has to be within the fiscal year. We've had someone purchase a computer the end of June. That purchase happened before the fiscal year and they were not qualified for LISS. So just keep in mind on the reimbursement. Things that are ineligible for LISS. So the first thing is that prohibited treatment, experimental treatment, programs and fundings that are not covered is also housing adaptation. So remember, it had home modification, which is different from housing adaptation, which adds on square footage. in reference to restriction of the individual or jeopardize the individual welfare. And so sometimes we've had families want locks on the individual's doors. And so for DDA purposes, they feel that is a restriction on the individual. And so we wouldn't cover locks on to keep an individual in their room. Cash. And so although it's $2,000, it's $2,000 worth of resources that we have to purchase. We cannot give a family $2,000. Case management. And so you need additional services. This is not a services that this program covers. We get requests for gift cards. Gift cards are not part of the LISS service. Housing assistance, eviction assistance, utility assistance is not part of LISS. Presents, and people will laugh and we're like, why would you put presents? Well, I did have a family that wanted a 16-year-old birthday party to be covered. And so she was a strong advocate, but the reality is you got to stick within the choices of the guidebook. Toys. And so no toys can be for LISS, only for therapeutic purposes. And so I tell family, Google is your best friend. Google for therapeutics toys, and you'll see a whole host of things that come up. And so you're going to have to use that special needs site versus, I would say, don't use the Walmart or Amazon site and say, well, it's a ball. And so the description for Walmart is going to be a toy, versus if you use the special needs site, it will also highlight that this is for motor skills or sensory skills or whatever. And so it has to be for therapeutic purposes. And so a lot of families have turned in the special needs invoice and then the Walmart invoice and say, well, it's the same. It's just that I need to use Walmart, is cheaper so I can stretch my dollars. The reality is the Walmart version will not be approved if the description does not have in there that it is a therapeutic or adaptive device. And most of the time it's not in there. Vacations. And so we've probably heard all reasons for the vacation that is a form of respite and everything. And so DDA still says no to vacations. Vehicles, gas, tires, registration, violations, fines, and stuff like that are ineligible. The other things that are ineligible is memberships that are including Costco, Sam's, or BJ's. And so it doesn't mean that you can't put in requests that is from those areas, but we cannot provide the membership. And so a lot of times the families will do the invoice and give us their membership number to do the purchase. So communication, let me tell you, the LISS program is a popular program. And so for fiscal year 23, we've had over 3,000 LISS requests. And so we do not have staff that will be able to communicate with you or guide you through this process. And so we'll have families that want a status update. Status updates are given through the mail after we have received all your necessary documents. So families will be notified within 90 days from the time that they turned in their last documents. And so they are confused the 90 days from when they did the random selection. It's 90 days from when they turned in all the necessary documents. And so no emails, no fax updates, no even on the phone, because the reality is due to HIPAA regulations, we cannot be communicating in reference to what is a child needs and requests where we do not know who you are, whether it's email or phone. So Communication, I tell families, please attend the LISS webinar to obtain as much information as possible. Also on our Facebook, we have all the current information on LISS. So we are encouraging families to join us on Facebook. And that is it for the presentation. I wanted to leave time open for you to ask some questions.
That was a great presentation. Thank you. You know, before it was called LISS funding, it was called rolling access. And this was probably 20 years ago, more. I was on the rolling access team when I worked at the
Yes.
ARC, and it was first come, first served. And people used to like wait outside of agencies at 6 a.m. to get in line to drop off their applications. So it's very refreshing that you know, has that part of the program has been improved upon.
Yeah.
We do have one question in the chat, which I will read to you from someone on here, and then hopefully other people have questions, and I have a couple. So the one someone wrote in, and they said that they have already been selected for funding, but they're trying to understand how much she needs to explain about why her child needs the computer and monitor that were purchased. Are you able to give some details about
Absolutely.
that?
On the LISS application, it has categories in reference to what the family will select, and then it has a section on why that child needs it. This is not for a paragraph. This is a one sentence. And so if it's to increase communication, that's it, and period. Do not put any more information, but you do have to feel that you have to put something in reference to that item, why you need it. And so for computers, usually it's around communication. If it is recreational, usually it's around to increase socialization. If it is home modification, you're requesting a fence, is usually to keep the person secure and no elopement issues. And so a one sentence is perfectly fine. Please do not give us a paragraph.
Thank you. Can people receive LISS more than once?
Yes. So the thing is, you can only receive LISS once in a fiscal year. And so sometimes families apply for LISS in round one, and they may not get it. They're on the wait list, and then they apply for round two. That is totally acceptable. However, they can't apply in round one, get LISS, apply for round two, and their kid claims their name, because you remember it's a random drawing. And so it's possible for your child's name to come up in both rounds. And so you will be denied in round two because you received LISS in round one. And so you could apply year after year, you just cannot get funding twice. It's it's up to $2,000. And you can't get up to $2,000 in round one and up to $2,000 in round two. That will be $4,000. So
so another question, and I had a similar question. How many awards, about like how many people were awarded each round? And I was wondering, since round two was so much longer, is there a lot more money in round two than round one? Or
usually round one is the best opportunity for a family, because of the fact is you have a much longer time to prepare, to spend the whole money the entire year, where when round two comes, by the time a family actually gets their notification letter, it is January. And so all the money has to be spent by the end of June. because June the 30th is the end of the fiscal year.
I, back in the day when I did this for rolling access, I know families would call and they would try to come up with $2,000 worth of things that they needed. And sometimes I felt like when we talked to families, they realized that maybe it was a piece of equipment or like they didn't really need the full 2,000. That
Exactly.
they could have requested just one thing that was much less than that, that really would have made a difference in their loved one's life. So I'm curious if you find that people sort of request one thing, or most people put in a request for $2,000.
I would say most people have put in for the maximum of $2,000. However, we do have a few families that will put in what they need. I had an individual that had a disability, was doing it by herself, and she put in for like $50 for a shopping cart. So, because she had to walk to the grocery store, and I was like, I just had to help that young lady find additional things. I was like, I just can't let you just spend $50. But we do have families that don't always ask for the entire amount, and so that makes it difficult for me to say how many individuals can we provide support to, because everyone doesn't get the max, or some people put in stuff that is not approvable. You know, I've had a bedroom set. And so you could say in that line item why the person needs it. The reality is that's not part of the category for LISS. And so LISS is not everything that your child needs. It's everything that's in that guidebook, everything that I talked about in reference to the different categories. That's what you have to consider for LISS.
Okay. And this might be impossible to answer as well. Is there do people get off the waiting list? Or is there a certain percentage?
Absolutely. We for round 2, we are doing it now, where families the problem with the time frame is families only had like 2 weeks to turn in stuff. And because we're so limited, you know, May the 1st is Monday. And so you got to think the program ended June the 30th. Last year, we had people name came off like mid-June, and they was like, I can't get the stuff in. And so we'll thank them. We want families to be honest so we could go to that next list. And so we try to spend every dime. Otherwise, it goes back to the state. And we don't want any funding to go back to the state ever, because what we're telling the state is that individuals with developmental or intellectual disabilities do not need this pool of money. And so when the politicians are looking at their budgets and it's like, okay, where can we reduce stuff? Well, we reduce where it's not being spent. And so we want to make sure and get the word out to families that let's spend this money as quickly as possible.
Thank you. There's a few more. Let's see. If someone got funding in the first round to cover swim and dance classes, would MCC pay the school directly?
Yes, the goal is whatever request you're putting in is for us to pay it directly. Reimbursement, like I said, can be iffy. I do not encourage any families to go in and pay it and then ask for reimbursement, because you still have to turn in the necessary documents, and then you still have to be approved. There's certain things that you have to turn in for your loved ones to be considered for a list. One, proof of residence, that you're a Maryland resident, proof of identity, proof of disability. And sometimes we'll have individuals that have all types of disabilities applied for LISS. And so that name came off the list. However, they may have, say, emotional diagnosis, not a developmental diagnosis, and then they would not be approved for LISS. And so their name came off the list, but we have to deny them, and then the next person's name will come off the list, because it's not a program for all disabilities. Usually we serve individuals that have autism, Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities, cerebral palsies. And so it's a wide variety of disabilities and developmental disabilities, usually around the younger kids, but not all disabilities covers LISS, because this funding is through the Developmental Disabilities Administration. And so the mental health department may have a different type of program. And so we're not saying, sometimes what happens is families will want to counter to talk about their child's disability. And we're not saying your child doesn't have a disability, but we're saying the disability is funded through a certain program.
Speaking of certain programs, someone asked a question about LISS funding. I mean, about respite care, and can LISS be used for respite? And if so, how does that work?
And so respite care is one of the programs that LISS does approve. So when I talked about the different categories, most of the things is once you get your guidebook, you will see each category tells what document is needed. And so for most things, you have to have an invoice to turn in for a particular company. Now, the good thing that DDA has changed, where it used to be always, it had to be a company you use. And so LISS heard from a lot of advocacy groups and families to say, I want to select who my loved one is being supervised, cared for, and monitored. And so what they said was, I want to choose a family member. And so at one point, LISS didn't cover people's family members. And so they have developed what's called an independent contractor. Usually those are for individuals that is quote unquote not a business. And so long as it's not the parent or legal guardian, you can use grandma, auntie, a neighbor. You get to select who you want to provide services for your child. And then under independent contractor, it's a form that they have to fill out, and there's certain things that they have to turn in. But each category outlines what documents are required to be turned in.
And does someone have to exhaust like funding through, say, respite services in Montgomery County before applying for respite through LISS? No.
No. One of the things is, and if families do attend the workshop, our webinar, it'll be under, personal care. They have personal care and they have respite. Respite is like a legal terminology during the state, and they'll say how many hours you can receive, how many consecutive days you can receive, versus if you choose personal care, you are providing or receiving the same services, and it's no limitations on days, hours, tracking. Do the person needs this training, that training? And so I tell families, select personal care. Sometimes we get accustomed to certain terminology, and that's what we want to stick with. Versus if you use personal care, it's the same thing. You get to choose who you want to monitor, watch, care for your child, and without the restrictions that the state puts on it.
That's a really good piece of advice you just gave. So there's a follow-up. Does the respite provider need to wait to be paid until after they've provided the service?
Yeah, yes. And so some services are paid in advance, a lot of our recreational services. We do camp, we do day camp, we do overnight camp. So the camps, if it's official camps, we pay it up front. It's medical services that get paid up front. We know you can't go to a doctor's office and not leave and pay that bill. Or the dentist's office, you know, the dentist is going to give you an invoice for braces and treatment. It's going to cost $2,500 or something like that. Realizing we only pay up to $2,000. And so it's set certain categories from the guidebook that will specifically let you know we pay as service rendered. And so that is going to be the respite people, and they turn in timesheets. And so we have some people turn in timesheets every 2 weeks or once a month. It had been an issue where family had picked a respite provider. We paid it. Family had issues, and then they wanted to pick something else. Well, that $2,000 was paid. And then that respite provider wasn't returning that money. And so the state wasn't going to reissue another $2,000, which would have been $4,000. And so they changed that policy where services are paid, because the timesheets have to be signed off by the family that you receive the services. That was another issue. People put in, and then parents was like, I haven't seen that person, and we ain't paid the money. So based on the guidebook, it would depend, on which services get paid up front. So usually like respite, personal care services, the training, and so we have IEP trainings. So families that do IEP training, that services get also paid as you go.
Thank you. Anna, you wrote a question in the chat, but I'm wondering if you might want to, it might be easier if you explained it, if you're still here and want to unmute and do that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was so hard for me to kind of put it down to, you were talking about the fiscal year, that the funds cannot be put for a year for anything or any payment done before the beginning of the fiscal year. Now, let's say if the child needs an adaptive device, let's say a brace, like a back brace or something like that, and there's out of pocket that needs to be paid towards that to cover the balance on that device. And let's say the prescription is out and the brace is given in June, and maybe the first payment is spread, the out of pocket is spread in 5 months, and maybe you pay the first payment the first month. Can the balance be paid when the fiscal year begins in July?
Yes, we can prorate things, but I just want families to know everything won't be covered. Now, some of the issue, this one, Anna, is a tricky one, because if you got the services, that's going to be part of it. And so when I say services, that means product. And so say it's a brace, you got that brace in June, I would not approve it. Even if you had a payment schedule. Now, if you say signed up your kid for dance class, you paid for June, July comes, we could pay July and on, because the dance class is still happening. We wouldn't pay for June. But if you get a service or product before the fiscal year and you're on a payment plan, it's no. And so this has been an issue where families put in for an iPhone. And so we didn't pay for a lot of iPhones. I'm going to tell you, a lot of iPhones. However, and they were on a payment plan and they wanted us to pay continue to pay for July, August, and September and keep on going. But the reality is you already got the iPhone before the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. That kind of explains. So even if it's a medical device, it doesn't matter.
It's when the state says services is for a particular fiscal year, it has to stay in that particular fiscal year.
Okay.
Make a purchase, your receipts and everything, the invoices can't show you purchased it already. You purchased that computer already. You purchased that iPad. A class, camp, you paid for it in advance. We can start paying for a camp or a dance class that starts in July. And so I want the families to understand the difference. If you get the item before the fiscal year, I cannot approve it.
Thank you. That is very clear. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is so helpful. Thank you so much. There are I think we've gotten every question that was in the chat box. If anyone has any additional questions, unmute yourselves now and ask them. Okay, well,
yeah, I do want to leave y'all with some tidbit. You do not have to apply for DDA services to use this program. However, as a family member myself, I want you to think DDA plans for services for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities like 5 to 10 years in advance. And so they look at who is on their wait list, who is on their roster, and this is where they come up with programs. And so they may see a high volume of individuals with Down syndrome or high volumes of individuals with autism. And so that helps them with the planning process. And so I tell families, if your kid is not on the DDA wait list, they are not being considered and counted for future services for your child. So even though you don't have to apply to get LISS, I want families to start thinking about the future. And so your child may not need something right now, but 5 or 10 years down the line, for the state to plan appropriately, they need to be counted.
So there's people here that, have 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds. Would you say that they should be applying for DDA?
Absolutely. DDA has a waiver for family. And so a lot of times, historically, what was put out is DDA doesn't serve children. That's not correct. And so it has been said over and over so many times, most families will think that's a reality and they never apply. And so it is just important, I would say, when the state goes to the politician and goes to the governors, and they need to say, we have 10,000 individuals on our wait list that need services. We're going to need additional fundings to provide certain programs. It is also helpful to know where DDA will be telling providers, look, we're about to have a boom. We're going to have an explosion of kids with autism that need services. I want your agency to start rethinking different programs you're going to have. And so the planning process takes place on DDA side, but it also takes place on all these nonprofits that are providing services on how do they plan and implement future programs. So just a food for thought. You don't have to do it, but I always put it out there so families could have a clearer picture.
Okay, someone with a toddler saying that was her understanding too. Do you recommend we specifically apply for DDA, the eligibility application?
Absolutely. I mean, we've served a kid that received personal support. He was like 6, you know. However, the reality is your child may stay on the wait list for years. You know, my child is on the wait list. You know, it has to do with who is most critical need for services. But the reality is, if we're talking about planning, and this is why I'm talking about, if you're talking about planning, you got to have your child counted. Their voice is letting DDA know, I'm here. I'm available. I'm on your wait list. The politicians need to know my child is on the wait list. They've been on the wait list for over 10 years. There needs to be a mechanism. There needs to be services. And maybe there needs to be services for families that are not on the, and this is one of my pet peeves, I have a thing of, why do we have to wait till we're in crises? If we get some support and services now, we won't be in crises. We won't be in a situation where we burnt out and we can't do it anymore. And we're talking about group home or foster care or something like that. Let the loved one stay in the home as long as possible, but maybe that family needs a little support.
Oh, very good point. And I will last spring, I guess, we had a couple different workshops on different topics from DDA, and they are all on the Down Syndrome of Network Montgomery County website. I think it's under the parent workshop section. They were all recorded. So if people want to learn more about DDA, there's a lot to learn. You know, feel free to go to the website, and you know, the information is there for you, and all the handouts are available as well.
Also, DDA, in reference to their family services, they do a webinar like once a month, like lunchtime, where it's predominantly family members or individuals that are needing services. And so they're discussing about, you know, different topics that they feel is pertinent to families and loved ones. And so, you know, this, you don't have to be a provider to be a part of this webinar. They're gearing it towards families. But yes, DDA does provide services for children. It is hard as heck to get, but they do. But I'm going to say this, if you never apply, you never get it. So it's almost like lottery. I want to win the lottery, but I rarely play until it's like really big.
Well, I mean, it's true. Like if you're not on a waiting list, you'll never get the service. So it's just kind of the way the game works, unfortunately, you know. In the interest of time, we've kept you for an hour. This has been so informative. It has been wonderful. You just so clearly and articulately explained how the system works. It's been recorded. It will be on our website. And I just want to thank you so much for speaking to us. And I'm sure that if people want to turn their cameras on and give a little thumbs up or a wave, feel welcome to. But just want to thank you so much for this presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. May the 1st, you're going on DDA's website, go to the LISS link, hit on it, sign your child up. Make sure the application is with your child's information and name and not the parents' information and name on it, unless it say parent, and usually that's at the end. So make sure you put your child's information on starting Monday. Pass the word on, okay? All right.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.